Hello! Today I'm taking a look at some Final Fantasy merchandise, which is not something I have a habit of doing on the channel, although those of you that saw my Japan video from earlier in the year, you will know that I do try and thrift and pick up some vintage Final Fantasy merch as and when I can. But I suppose more recently I have been purchasing some Final Fantasy stuff, and as my computer has blown up and I can't do any of my more in-depth kind of reviews and video editing and stuff like that, is not available to me at the moment. So I thought I'd go through and discuss this particular set of figures that I picked up recently. So what we are looking at today is a set of Final Fantasy VIII figures which are contemporary to the game. So they were released in about 99, the year 2000, when Final Fantasy VIII proper was released. And they're quite an interesting bunch of figures, really. They are not the best made in the world, particularly when we compare them to the more recent Play Arts Kai figures, for example. But they were in keeping with a trend that Square seemed to have at the time, which was selling collectible box sets of figures alongside their games. So they did the same thing with Final Fantasy VII, and then likewise with Final Fantasy VIII, they released what's called the Extra Soldier set. So I've picked up both of the two collectible box sets that were available, and also a figure of Irvine. And I did get a really good deal with this on eBay, actually. So generally, only speaking for the UK here, people try and sell them for upwards of £150, £200. I managed to get all of these for £38, including postage. It was about £42, so that's maybe coming up to $50. They are contemporary with the time, as I say, so some signs of wear and tear, but they have been well kept. I'm not sure if you can see with the Irvine figure, but the plastic he's kept in is actually starting to yellow a little bit, and he's not looking too brilliant. But let's talk about these figures now. And I think what really struck me and struck a lot of people as quite weird is how they were quite disparately packaged. Now, looking at this from a marketing perspective, I think maybe they split the characters out so that to get all the main characters, if you like, you had to really have both box sets. So for example, you have Squall, who's the lead character, in one box, but then in the other box you have Rinoa, who is his romantic interest, for example. But beyond that, it's quite strange that you have characters like Edea and Laguna here. You don't actually have the whole central party available in these box sets. And more so than that, some of the box sets I've seen, and I'm not sure if this is regional, but in the Squall box set, you get Quistis or you can get Selphie. So those two figures kind of switched out, and it was one or the other. I'm not sure the reasoning for that, as I say, whether that was geographical or what. Beyond that, I think the reason these are called Extra Soldier box sets is because all of these figures you could get individually packaged, so you could buy them as standalone figures, like Irvine here, apart from Edea, Angelo, the dog, and the Moonbar. So if you wanted Edea for whatever reason, or these kind of accessory characters, again, you would have to buy the box set because they were exclusive to this collectible box. So that's about it for the kind of arrangement and packaging of the figures. As I say, I've bought these for nostalgic purposes. I don't want to resell them, so I will open them and we can have a look at some of the figures proper. So here we have them out of the box. Here's Squall. As you might expect from quite a basic action figure, he does have some appendages that can move. So you can move his arms, you can move him at the waist, and that's about it. So he's in a pretty static stance, as with Seifer, who's in his standard gunblade stance, and Laguna. But yeah, as I say, they are not, and I'm not sure how good the camera is here because I'm not on a proper computer, but as you can see, compared to the sort of calibre of Final Fantasy figures you get these days, they are not the best in terms of quality or painting and stuff like that. And actually, one thing that's notable about not only these figures but also the Final Fantasy VII figures before is they do have the square sort of rights printed on the back along with Made in China. So a bit budget, and yeah, so there is a date on there that says 1999, so these are 99. So here, for another example, is Seifer. Actually, the appendages are quite different on all of these characters because all you can do with Seifer is actually move his arm. He's much more like a statuette. You can see he's in his gunblade stance. You can't move his head, his legs, or anything else there. So I think they're all quite different in the actual parts of them you can move. And rather pleasantly, he doesn't actually have Made in China written on the back of him. So I think that's only some of the figures have that as well. But yeah, this is the Final Fantasy VIII collectible box set of figures. So as I say, I'm quite happy to get these out. Probably not going to get Irvine out of his box. And as I say, I think ultimately the really annoying or strange thing about these is how they've been bundled, because what's clear to me now is that I don't have Selphie, and I think Selphie is the only other character that they sort of designed in this set of figures. Unfortunately, they didn't do Kiros and Ward, for example, to go alongside Laguna. There was no other sort of major or secondary characters that they opted to build into this set. Although they did make some kind of larger vinyl figures that included Kiros and Ward and characters like that, but they're not very nice looking. They look actually lower quality than these, so I probably won't extend my collection to those. And really, I think these are the only real kind of contemporary to the time Final Fantasy VIII figures you can get, because as we know, Final Fantasy VII has gone through iterations. With the remake, as I showed in my Japan video, we have new figures of Final Fantasy VII being made of Cloud and Zack and everyone involved in that game. And even quite recently, I think maybe it's 2 years ago now, they re-released a load of Final Fantasy IX figures, which look great. And I think they were Playouts Kai ones as well. But Final Fantasy VIII has never really had its due in terms of figures and merchandise. And I think you can get a figure of Squall from Edea, for example, which is pretty cool looking. But again, they've never extended the collection to Final Fantasy VIII proper. And I think in this regard, much like how there's never been a proper remaster or a proposed remake, where there is obviously the Final Fantasy VII remake and rumours of Final Fantasy IX being remade, it is sort of the black sheep in many respects of Square's corpus, because they haven't really invested time and effort into making more merchandise. So these are sort of the real deal. These are the main Final Fantasy VIII figures you can get if you were interested. And yes, as I say, not the best quality, but very nostalgic to me. I remember seeing them when I was kind of like 10, 11 years old or whatever in the shop, and I was like, I really want those one day. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little episode that I'm making in the interim until I can hopefully get a new computer and start actually getting into production and making proper reviews and discussions again. But yeah, this is just the latest haul of some Final Fantasy VIII merch that I managed to pick up that I'm quite happy with.